Welcome to the Sage 300 Extension Toolkit webinar. Amanda here from marketing, and we're today joined by some ISV experts, and they're going to help us uncover some great enhancement tools to further extend functionality of your Sage solution. The agenda is first off, we're going to have Terence and he is bringing to us Barcode by AutoSimply, his company, and purchase orders is going to be covered, order entry and inventory control. The next session is going to be covered by Steele from Pacifictech, and he's covering purchasing workflow. He will cover automated workflows, document processing, web approvals and mobile approvals, substitutions, and integration into accounts payable and purchase orders. And the final session will be covered by Fouche, and she's bringing to us Orchid Extender. Anne is going to talk about alerts, loggings, and workflows, integration, and business logic. So just handing over to you now, Terence.
Thank you, Amanda. Before anything, special thanks to the microchannel team for setting up this webinar for us. So going into our topic this morning, we are going to be talking about Barcode for Sage 300. Without our solution, Sage 300 as an ERP would seem to be a standalone solution, where the warehouse transactions are separated from the ERP itself. So what happens is people are using paper and pen, writing down things as they happen. There is a secondary data entry required at the back office. So this could be the warehouse clerk or the warehouse supervisor posting a PO receipt, for example. Because you have these two separate steps, different people doing it, it tends to be inefficient and error prone. So with our solution, what we want to do is bring the warehouse transactions to the frontline people. So these are referring to the warehouse man, the shop floor production personnel doing transactions on the floor. So on the warehouse floor, for example, we want them to be able to initiate the inventory transactions in Sage. Ideally, they would be using scanners, scanning labels to identify items, posting them against Sage 300 documents like purchase orders, sales orders, or manufacturing orders, maybe. On the back office side, everything is automatically up to date. No transactions needed, essentially maybe just doing some checkups and everything. With this solution, what we want to be able to give to you as our customers is a better ROI. So the more transactions you have, it would be easier to recoup the investment on the hardware and the software side. Everything would be accurate. Ideally, if you are scanning the labels off the products or off the boxes, it would limit the chance of somebody posting a transaction against a wrong item. If we are able to deliver the right stuff to the right people against the right document, customers will be happy. And then because everything is done on a touchscreen interface, screens are simplified. It's actually very easy to roll out to the production line or to the warehouse people. So it makes it quick to implement as well. And it simplifies the training moving forward for new staff as they go on board. So in terms of hardware, we actually support 3 platforms. So obviously we can support Android. So nowadays, if you are not aware, all of the scanners in the market practically are running on Android. So a good example would be a Zebra MC33. It has built-in scanners, so you can just scan and post transactions against Sage 300. For those of you who are Apple users, we can also support iOS. So that means you can even just use your iPhones or iPads to post transactions to Sage 200 if you prefer. And then lastly, we can also support what we call Windows 10 UWP. So it's basically allowing you to download the same app from Microsoft Store, and you can use it on PCs or laptops, maybe by attaching a barcode gun to it. So in terms of requirements for Sage 300, we only need one LAN pack to connect to Sage 300. So this is how we extend the operations to the warehouse floors. So one LAN pack can be shared by 10 or 20 warehouse or production personnel as they post PO receipts or manufacturing issuances. So that's just a quick overview of the product itself. Let me now go into the demonstration. So here I just have the Sage 300 desktop. Most of you guys are probably familiar with it, and you can see the inventory barcode module activated within the same menu. So it is designed to be exclusively for Sage 300. Anybody who is familiar with Sage 300 should have little difficulty getting familiar with the screens. Notice how we have our own user master. So this is just to highlight that the barcode users are different from Sage 300 LAN pack users. LAN pack users are back office people, accountants, cost accountants, supervisors maybe. For the barcode users, we're talking about warehouse people, production people, maybe even sales people. Now, let me now show my mobile phone. So this is just me casting my phone to my PC. And you can see here the app running from my phone. So let me just log out first so I could start from the very beginning. Notice how if I click on the setup icon here, all we need to connect to Sage 300 is actually a IP address or the computer name of the web server of Sage 300. So all you need is Wi-Fi, a good Wi-Fi on your warehouse floor, a phone, a tablet, or a handheld scanner. You can put in the IP address here and you're good to go. Just like Sage, we could select which company I'm logging into in case you have more than one. And then here, I can log in to the app itself. So since I'm using my phone, everything would be a touch screen. And I would be able to basically select which transaction I want to do in Sage. Right now, I'm just using the mouse so that you can see where I'm clicking. But you can see here, I can do the Sage 300 operations, PO, OE, IC transactions. We even have support for our manufacturing solution, shop floor control, inquiries, even PJC. So just to do a quick demonstration, let's say if I want to do a PO receipt. So that's selecting PO receipt. Ideally, of course, I would have the PO in front of me maybe. I can open the camera or click on the scanner and then scan on the PO number to be processed. So that way I can just jump to the record without doing any switch. This is now receiving the item. So I can just scan the item if I click on the camera here and then just select, let's say, A1103. So this is now the fluorescent desk lamp, and now I can input the quantity to be received. So from here, I can then scan, let's say, let me quickly show you how I could scan what we call a 2D barcode. So what I did actually was scan a QR code for A1900G, and notice that I scanned it one time, but the screen here is showing us not only the item code, we have already inputted the lot number, the quantity, and even the expiry dates. So that's using what we call a GS1 or HIBC standard. It's a global standard where you can combine multiple information into one barcode. Before I post, I could click on the review button here. And let's say everything looks good. I could then click on the post button. And this would now post the transaction directly to 300. So everything is done on the web server. So nothing is actually stored or kept on the handheld device. So here I have receipt 98 already posted. And in the latest versions of Barcode, we can even trigger the printing of labels if we wanted to. So that's showing you a PO receipt on a Barcode device. Let me just quickly move to another platform just to highlight to you that we can do the same transactions from, let's say, a laptop device. So this time around, I'm using my laptop. I have downloaded the app through Microsoft Store, and I'm logging on to do a transaction. So this is just to highlight that I can use laptops. And of course, the screen is a bit bigger, so it's easier for you guys to see. So a while ago, I showed a PO receipt. So the same can be done for a shipment. This time, I won't use a scanner. Let's say I just want to look for any sales order with a 1. So this is now showing me 2 records. Let's say I want to process order 100. This message is telling me that there's a prior snapshot that I could start off with, but I'll just click on no to start from scratch. And then here, again, without using any scanners, let's say I want to pick a fluorescent desk lamp. How many? Let's say 5. And then I'll just pick one more item, 5. And then just for those of you who are using lot or serial tracking functionality of Sage, this is now the A1900G calculator. Ideally, I would be scanning the lots as I pick them. But worst case scenario, we are lazy. I want to just auto allocate. It's also possible. So this is how it would look. And again, I could review everything and then just click on the post button when I'm ready to actually post the shipment. So that was a quick example of OE shipment. And then very quickly, I would just quickly highlight that notice how we have here stock count as well. So if we wanted to, we can use the advanced stock pick functionality of AutoSimply. This is now the user going around the warehouse, doing a stock count. Again, ideally, you're scanning the labels, but without labels, I can just go in and then scan every item as I see them. When I'm ready to, let's say, go on a break, I can post. This is now allowing me to either add or override prior counts. With the AutoSimply stock pick functionality, notice how I can just download the stock worksheets, the count sheets I need. So that means you can actually do some offline counting if we wanted to, and then eventually go back online to then upload the count back to Sage 300. We also have added pick list functionality. So if you want to be able to generate the pick list, scan items, and record the picking step, but not yet trigger an OE shipment until a later time when everything has been completed. So that's what we call a pick list, and it's part of the AutoSimply barcode solution. So that's just a very quick overview of barcode. We can do most of the Sage core functionality, like, for example, IC receipts, IC assembly, And then lastly, I just want to quickly show you the item inquiry, where, for example, if I wanted to see the stock details of an item. So this is now empowering the warehouse personnel to see what stock are available where, on order details, allocated details. So everything now is on the fingertips of our personnel. All right. So that's all for Barcode.
Okay, yeah, hi everyone. So I'm Jamie Steele from Pacifictech, and so now we'll just have a quick session just talking about workflows. So just a little bit of background about our company. I won't go through this too much, but we've been in the Sage 300 space for over 20 years. And so, yeah, got a pretty good customer base around the world and some really great customers in Australia. So really, yeah, we focus on one of the key areas is procure to pay and the whole AP automation area. And so, yeah, our modules sort of fall into these 4 different categories. So a lot of it's automation. We also got some really good solutions for putting in compliance and controls into Sage 300. So, you know, Sage 300 does a reasonable job on a lot of these areas, but some companies just want, you know, extra compliance. Then we've got mobility solutions, so browser and smartphone solutions, and then also provide a lot of workflow solutions. All right, so this next diagram shows the 3 different workflow areas that we provide. So we've got purchasing workflow, so that's the whole requisitioning and approvals using delegated authorities, you know, as to how much people can do their approvals, and you can have multiple approval steps. We've got funds availability, so that's the real-time GL budget checking, and also works with project and job costing from Sage, so you can do budget checking against your projects. And with workflow documents, you can attach files to your transactions. So if you've got quotes from your suppliers, those can be attached. So yeah, that's the whole purchasing side of the workflows. Then in the middle is payables workflow, which is the AP automation area, and so that's we'll cover that a little bit more shortly. And then on the right hand side is workflow notification. So this module provides workflows in 22 parts of Sage 300. And so, for example, customer master files, vendor master files, general ledger, account codes, IC items. So you can have workflows on those, and also on some of the key transactions as well. So AP payments, AR credit notes, GL journals, can all have workflows where people need to approve those transactions, or they can just be alerted about those transactions. Right, and this slide here is really showing the whole P2P, so the whole procure to pay process. So in these green boxes here are the 6 main steps of P2P within any ERP system. And so the second row, this is showing the controls that our modules are providing. So what you can see here is that 5 of the 6 areas, we've got a workflow in place. One where we don't have a workflow is on receiving, but we can block over receiving, so that provides a good control there. And so, yeah, so really the end-to-end P2P process can be workflowed and controlled using our solutions. And then down the bottom is just the different places where you can attach files using the workflow documents module. Right, now just this next one is AP automation, so we'll just touch on that quickly. So this is sort of the automated data capture of invoices, so there's the invoices come in by email. Our DPS system will extract that data and create the transaction within payables workflow, ready for AP to review it. I guess just a couple of key points as well. So the whole e-invoicing, which I'm not sure, I think in Australia this is quite a key area. Like I think all Australian federal government departments have to support e-invoicing by June of this year. Some of them was June of last year, but I think all of them June of this year. So our solution supports receiving of e-invoices. In the hand that's been running live since July of last year. And I guess another area is just the whole credit card expense reports. So again, our solutions handles those very elegantly. And so once these transactions are going into the approval process, and likewise with requisitions, the managers can then approve those through using PW Web just the browser option, or they can use Pacifictech Go, which is the smartphone solution. Right, and yeah, so this, yeah, like I could just say that this e-invoicing is something that we've just added in the last 8 or so months. All right, so in terms of a demo, so we don't really have a lot of time, so we'll just sort of look at a couple of key screens. So under payables workflow, the DPS console. So if you're entering your invoices and putting them through an approval process, you could come and enter them into these screens and attach the invoice image. But what a lot of clients in Australia are looking for these days is that automated data capture. So in that case, they come into the DPS console here. So this is the landing page where invoices come in after having the data captured. So you can see we've got sort of a number of invoices here. If we just double click and open up this one, for example, here's the invoice image on the right hand side, and over here on the left hand side is the data that's either been extracted or been derived from other data within the invoice. So for example, we can see the invoice number here, so that's come straight from the supplier invoice. For the vendor number, the way the system works, it'll use the GST number, or in Australia the ABN number, and then it uses that to look up the vendor master file to find the vendor number. And then there's other fields here that can be defaulted, or otherwise they can be left blank for the AP user to review and populate those values. Another thing that we've got added in recently was capturing the date and the time that the invoices come in, and this was driven by another requirement in Australia. I think it's called the PTRS, Payment Time Reporting Scheme. So I think all businesses with turnover over 100 million have to comply with the PTRS. So this sort of captures, so you can record when you receive the invoice and then compare that to when you pay the invoice. So that's another feature we've added recently. And so, yeah, so the whole idea here is AP just review what the system's captured. And so, instead of doing the data entry, they're now reviewing what the system has captured. And so they can obviously save quite a lot of time. All right, so that's the DPS console. Then if we come and look at a couple of our solutions in terms of managers doing their approvals, and so even also doing requisitions, they can use PW Web, which is the browser interface. And so when they log in here, that's going to Sage to check their credentials are correct, and then it reads all their security rights. And so these menus here are all, what's shown on the menus is driven off their security within Sage 300. So this person's actually, I think there's about 8 different transactions can be done through the web. So this user's only got a smaller set of those. But if we just look at this is now the approval console, so they can approve their requisitions that have been sent to them, or they can approve supplier invoices, or they can approve other types of transactions like new vendors or changes to vendors. And so just in terms of looking at invoices, then we've also got this function here called quick review. And so this was developed, the idea of sort of presenting all the information on the screen, on a single screen. Previously, the managers used to have to click through a few different screens to see all the information. So customers sort of said to us, oh, you know, it'd be a lot more efficient if it was all presented on the one screen. So this was something we added in probably just over a year ago. So you can see the invoice image there, and then the GL codes here, and all the other information. All right, and so people can do requisitions, and they can do approvals, they can do receipts, and they can do a number of other transactions. Plus, we've got some quite powerful inquiry screens, so they can look up requisitions, POs, they can do their funds availability checking, so their real-time GL budget checkings all available through the web as well. All right, so that's the PW Web, and then the other area is PT Go, or Pacifictech Go, which is the smartphone app. And so this is a native app which you can download from the Google Store or the Apple Store. And again, logging in using your credentials. And so now the smartphone app is more about doing approvals. And so here we can see this person's got 6 purchasing transactions to approve and 6 invoices. So if we look at one of our 4 AP invoices, we can drill into this, and this will now show us those 4 invoices. And then if we want to look at, say, this bottom one, we can click on the arrow, and it will now show us the line information. And then we can open up the invoice image and review that on the smartphone as well. Right, so your customers are sort of, saying this is really helping their whole approval process gets accelerated, so they can sort of get invoices approved more quickly. All right, so that's really, I think, just in the limited time, that's just a few key things that we wanted to show. Just in terms of the differentiators, I mean, I think all of the solutions that you're looking at today are all inside Sage 300, which, is a real strength. There's no syncing of data with a separate system up in the cloud. And I guess with our solutions as well, it's really, I guess we've had quite a few people sort of use the term plug and play. So the solutions are quite powerful, but you can also get them up and running quite easily, and they're quite sort of, quite a low ongoing cost, which is a good thing. Yes, and so also just, this bottom one, end-to-end procure-to-pay process. So a lot of companies might, just start with one part of the process and automate that, and then, but they want to have the comfort that when they move to step 2 or step 3, that the solution will cover those areas, and that's where our end-to-end P2P solution is. That's another strong point. All right, and we've got some other modules as well, but I won't talk through this information now, so just so we can keep things moving along. But obviously these are all on our website. So yeah, that's it from me. So thanks for your time, and we'll now move on to the next section.
Thanks, Amanda. My name's Anne from Orchid Systems, and today I'm going to run through one of our modules, or half of our modules, Extender. I know this is a busy diagram here on the right-hand side, but I hope to explain it to you in the next minute or so. So Extender allows you a cost-effective way to both configure and customize Sage 300, depending on the edition that you purchase. So if we look at this diagram here, in the middle, Sage 300 has a database, and these green circles are Sage. So Sage has a business logic, which it calls the views, and then sitting on top of that, they have their classic screens, the desktop screens, they have their web screens, and they have an API, an SDK interface, web services, import, export, and the ability to do macros. What Extender allows you to do is to customize Sage at different levels, either to configure different functionality or to customize different functionality. So first, configuring. And here I'm referring to the light orange circles. Using Extender Configurator Edition, which is what I'm going to be demonstrating today, you can configure alerts, logging, and workflows on any Sage 300 master file or batch or transaction, if you're talking about order entry or purchase orders. So in the logging, it can be who changed what field when. In the alerting, it could be an email to say, and change the credit limit on this date and time, or it could be a notification such that on my workflow console, I have an entry saying, and changed this particular transaction, and I just need to go acknowledge to acknowledge that I've seen and recognized that something has happened. You can also create a note, as an Orchid note. So when the credit limit changes, for example, Extender can create a note to say, and change the credit limit from 1,000 to 2,000 on this date or time. And that note could be shown either in order entry when they're creating new orders and they want to know what the current credit limit is, or maybe in AR invoice entry, depending what you're doing. The other side or the other edition of Extender is the developer edition, which and now I'm referring to these darker orange triangles, and what the developer edition allows you to do using Python code is to tailor, to change the business logic, to extend the business logic, and create your own tables and views within the Sage 300 company, and in such a way that all the reporting tools and other third-party developers would see these tables as if they were core tables. And using the developer edition, we are also able to customize or tailor the Sage 300 desktop screens and write your own new processes all together. And we're working on tailoring the web screens. That is still work in progress. And using Extender, you can completely integrate your Sage 300 system with any other system. And because we're using Python, which is an open source language, which has lots of open source libraries you can use, it typically cuts down your development time with integration. But in the next 15 minutes, what I'm going to be showing you is the Configurator edition. So it allows you to configure, no coding needed, configure alerting, logging, and notifications. It also allows you to do workflows and track approvals of any master file being created, any batch being posted, or any document and order entry being posted, as well as trigger third-party integration. And this first part I'm going to show you is the alerting and logging. So we can, whenever any master file or transaction is either amended or created, depending what you want to do, we can alert somebody that this has happened. So we can either create an email and send an email off, or we can create an information manager note and display that note wherever you need to see it, and/or. And this works across any third-party module as well. So you could have an alert on Orchid's EFT, or AutoSimply's manufacturing orders, or Pacifictech any of their transactions being created. If the modules are created in the SDK, then Extender will be able to alert and log on those particular modules. So the first example I'm going to show you is some alerting and logging around customer master file changes and across EFT vendor master file changes. So I'm just going to open up my Sage 300, and here's my customer screen. So when I open my customer screen and first look at my customer 1100, what you can see in the right-hand side, and apologies if this is a bit small, is a note that was created by Extender. So Extender created this note saying customer 1100 bargain mart. the territory code has changed from AB to CC. It was done by admin on the 15th of March. I've got a second note here, which is saying that the credit limit was changed also on the 15th of March from 15,000 to 8,000. And on the processing tab, we see the credit limit is 8,000. And on the address tab, we see that the territory code is sitting at CC. And similarly for all our customers who have had amended credit limits and territory code changes since the configuration was done. So if I was to change this to XX and save, the configuration that's currently sitting on the territory field is to update this code, this block, as well as send an email. And the email has been sent through to my Orchid systems, you know, a particular email address, and you can see it's very similar to the note. 1105, customer 1105, bargain mart, the territory code has changed from BC to XX on this date and time. And next time this note is refreshed, so if I just refresh this note, you would see that as well. It's sitting now at XX. So Extender is able to detect when a field is changing and then drive some events when that field gets changed. And this is all by configuration, it's not by coding. So if I look here at the Extender setup, you are able to create events, as many events as you want. And I didn't actually show you the log, but I will show you the log. So the first event type you can create is to log a change. So you can say when this field or when this record changes, log the change. The other event that we saw was to create the territory note. So you create a record for this, and this time you say it's an information manager note. Yes, you need information manager notes in order to be able to do this. So to create an information manager note, you say what note type it is, which defines the color. You remember one was yellow and one was blue, as well as the template for that particular note. So you can use any of the fields on both the email and on the note, and you can access the original underscore, and that is how it was able to show us the original territory code and the newly amended territory code. So by creating those events, we can then attach them to the customer view. So you can attach your events to any view, all the core modules, GL, AR, AP, of course, OE, IC, PJC, but also any third party that creates views, like Auto Simply Manufacturing. So here we've said the credit limit, we want to log and create a note, as well as the territory code, we want to log, create the note, and send the email. So I showed you these two, I didn't show you the log. So just going back to our customer. $11.05, if I click on the icon to see our logs, I can see that you know, in this last month, these are the two changes that has happened to the territory field in this case, and it went from BC to XX most recently. So another form of notification is actually to use the workflow and just generate a workflow record which immediately gets completed but sits in the workflow history tables. And for that, I configured it around our EFT vendors. So around my EFT vendor, if I pick up a vendor code, let's pick up this one, 1350. Let's say I change the status to entered, which means we can't create an EFT file against that. So what Extender is doing in the background is recording the workflow instance, completing it, but also emailing the people who are configured in the workflow that this status has been changed. So if we go to the inquiries, in the workflow summary, we would see the vendor status change for vendor 1350. And if we look at the detail of that, we can see that admin did this change, and it was running the notification workflow, and it's told Steve that that record has changed. So this was a type of workflow which is just a notification. And your workflow templates are set up just as we configured event types and view types. Your workflow templates are configured in this screen, and finding the one on our EFT vendors status change, you can see this notification assigns the user to a user group or a person, sends the email, and then completes. So your workflows could be very short like this, or they could be more complicated to track approvals and different routes and multi-level approvals and so on. So just going back to my PowerPoint. So the next thing I'm going to show you is workflow, a little bit more complicated workflow than just a simple notification via email. And workflows can be attached to any master file or any batch and transaction, any core module that's created through the SDK. And your workflows could be very simple, like it appears on your console and you need to just acknowledge the change. And to do that, I'll do a change to an inventory item and show you the acknowledgement. Or it could be more complicated, like a requested credit limit change. And so we'll go to the AR customer and we'll request a credit limit change for a customer. Or it could, in fact, on approval, like an AP invoice batch, approving it could post the batch. And I'm going to show you the approvals just using the desktop console, but these can be done remotely using a hosted website where you can click on a link to approve or reject, or using Workflow Anywhere, an app that uses IIS and allows you to approve and reject that way. So back in my Sage, the first workflow I'm going to show you is on IC items. So the workflow template is what it does is once an item is amended in any way, because it's been set around general amendments, not just around a particular field amending. So if I add the description, then the workflow has been generated in the background, and whoever has been assigned to that workflow would receive an email to go and acknowledge this change. So looking at the workflow template, the workflow console, so I'm logged in as administrator and I've been given the ability to view all. So I can see everything that's sitting on our workflow console. And I don't actually see that item. Maybe I set that one to automatically approve, because this I see is a different one. So here's a similar one, the IC item approval change, which is set for Susan to approve on this particular item. And it's not really an approval, it's just an acknowledge. So from here, we could drill down to the IC item. We could see the history entries of this workflow or reassign if we need to. But just an acknowledgement would say, yes, I've seen that change. And those steps, both administrator doing the change, or in this case, Anne doing the change, and the acknowledge step would be recorded in the history. So we have a record of somebody saying, yes, I've seen those item changes. Similarly, we have a workflow, and that's just done through another template. So on our workflow templates, we'll have one for the IC item changes. As you can see, it has a few more steps, and it waits for the acknowledge step to be clicked before it completes the workflow template. And we have a similar thing around, we've got a more complicated workflow template around customer credit limit approvals. So let's say customer 1200. if we request a credit limit change, so the last time it was changed was in 2020, and it was made 19,000, so we're going to make it 30,000, and you know, click save. So first of all, it's telling us that customer 1200 already has a workflow in progress. So this, and that initial request needs to be approved or rejected. So it's not going to do any changes on this particular one. And we can use these icons, the workflow icons, to see what workflow is in progress and who's asked for what sort of increase or decrease in the customer credit limit. So let's just try 1210. Hopefully I haven't done one for them. So let's ask for a $50,000 increase. So the workflow is, this one has now been started, and it's put our credit limit back to 12,500 until such time it is approved. And either using the remote app, if I'm the person, you know, if let's say Anne did the change and Anne's managers assigned this particular workflow template, they would see it on their console, waiting for approval, and or on their app waiting for approval, and or on the website if that's how they want to do remote approvals. And here they could approve or reject, drill down to the customer to see. In your approval process, you can have optional parameters. So we can say, you know, approve the credit limit, no, not at 25,000, but only at 24,000, and give a comment. And once approved, it would be removed from the workflow console, and all the steps would be recorded in the background against that particular workflow template. Just going to talk about triggering integration. So just like we attached events like our logging and alerting to any view field, you can also trigger an event to call an external application or your own custom code. And an example of this would be, you know, when the vendor's name and address changes, call this web service to update this buying portal for these details. So instead of having to do these sorts of integrations using you know, triggers on your SQL database or snapshots to know when a field has changed, you can get Extender to trigger the event as and when it happens. And because we know when an event happens like that, we can also prevent things happening. So you could do validations like I was updating the territory code to XX. You could say, well, if the territory code is not one of our valid states in Australia, then don't allow the change to go through. So it gives you a platform to extend the business logic to do additional work as well as validate the data, as well as your alerting and logging. And that's my time up, I think. Amanda, back to you.
Thank you, Anne. And many thanks to Terence and Jamie as well for your great overviews of Barcode, purchasing workflow, and also again to Anne for Orchid Extender. And thanks again for everyone for joining us today. If you are interested to learn more about any of these solutions, please reach out to your account manager below, wherever you are.